My neighbor built a $50,000 fence to steal my ranch. So I turned her gate into a toll road that charges her $500 every month just to leave her own house. Karen Morrison blocked the dirt road my great-grandfather built back in 1947, thinking she could force me to sell 200 acres to her developer friends for pennies on the dollar. Big mistake. What Karen didn't know was that the easement she was blocking wasn't just a right-of-way. I own every inch of dirt under that road, and Texas law has a beautiful little provision about private toll roads. It was Monday morning, 6 a.m. Diesel fumes hung in the morning mist, revenge brewing stronger than my coffee. There was Karen in her silk pajamas, grinning like a cat with cream, explaining how her new security gate was for everyone's safety. The look on her face when I installed my own toll booth was priceless. My name is Jake Sullivan. I'm the third generation to work this 200-acre cattle ranch outside Austin. My grandfather homesteaded this land in 1947 when it was nothing but mesquite and rattlesnakes. He built that dirt road with a team of mules and pure Texas stubbornness. I inherited the place 15 years ago. Ranching doesn't exactly pay the bills anymore, so I work as an electrical contractor during the week to keep the lights on, literally and figuratively. My daughter Emma is 16 now. She shows prize-winning cattle through 4-H. That girl's got more grit than most grown men I know. We've been a team ever since her mom died in a car accident 3 years back. Black ice on Highway 35. Cancer would have been easier to fight. The ranch sits at the end of a dirt road that cuts across what used to be the Johnson family's cotton field. About 5 years ago, some hotshot developer bought that land and turned it into Sunset Hills Estates. One of those cookie-cutter subdivisions where every house looks ordered from the same catalog. McMansions with 3-car garages and lawns, so perfect they look like AstroTurf. That's where Karen Morrison comes in. 52 years old, pharmaceutical sales executive, moved down from Dallas 2 years ago in her white BMW with vanity plates that read Quinn M01. Real subtle. She's married to Brad, this mouse of a lawyer who apparently learned conflict resolution by studying ostriches. Karen got herself elected HOA president by running on a platform of property values and security, which in Karen speak translates to making everyone else's life miserable. Their house sits right next to where my access road crosses into the subdivision. $800,000 of beige stucco and manufactured charm with a view of my cattle pasture that Karen apparently finds aesthetically challenging. So there I was that Monday morning staring at this fence that appeared overnight like some kind of spite-fuel magic trick. The smell of creosote from those fence posts mixed with Karen's overpowering perfume, the kind that's probably trying to mask 2 packs a day. The metallic clang of that electronic gate mechanism sounded like a prison door slamming shut. Karen handed me a 47-page access agreement with all the enthusiasm of a cat presenting a dead mouse. $500 a month plus insurance plus road maintenance costs plus liability concerns plus property aesthetics, she said. Now, I may work with my hands for a living, but I'm not stupid. That road predates her precious subdivision by 60 years. It's recorded as an easement in the county records, which means I have every legal right to use it. I tried explaining this to Karen in the politest way possible. Her response, "I'll call the sheriff for trespassing." Wouldn't you know it, Deputy Williams shows up 20 minutes later. Turns out he's Karen's golf partner over at the country club. Real convenient. He suggests I work something out with the HOA. Keep the peace. But here's the thing that really got my blood boiling. Emma's prize heifer, Buttercup, needed veterinary care that morning. What used to be a 15-minute trip to the vet turned into a 45-minute detour around the entire subdivision. When you got a sick animal, every minute counts. The taste of dust and diesel filled my mouth as I sat there in my truck, watching Karen's smug little smile. She thought she had me cornered. What she didn't know was she just picked a fight with someone who learned property law the hard way by inheriting land that developers have been trying to steal for 3 generations. By Wednesday, I had a harassment complaint filed against me with the sheriff's department. Apparently, my aggressive behavior and intimidating presence posed a threat to the peaceful residents of Sunset Hills Estates. The fact that I had politely asked about my legal rights somehow translated to terroristic threatening in Karen's twisted little mind. She started a neighborhood WhatsApp group called Safety First Sunset Hills. The rumors flying around that chat would make the National Enquirer blush. According to Karen's version of events, I was an unstable widower with anger management issues who let my cattle roam free and probably had a meth lab in my barn. The creativity was almost impressive. She rallied 3 other HOA board members to her cause, the kind of people who think having a boat makes them admirals and owning a riding mower qualifies them as landscaping experts. Together, they voted to use HOA funds to hire Secure Solutions security services for regular patrols. Nothing says we're terrified of one guy with a pickup truck like spending community money on rent-a-cops. I could have just sat there and taken it, but my grandfather didn't raise quitters. I hired a surveyor to map out the exact property boundaries and document that easement once and for all. Cost me $800 I couldn't really afford, but sometimes you've got to spend money to make a point. The surveyor showed up on Friday morning with equipment that beeped and chirped like R2. D2 having a conversation with a smoke detector. Watching him work in the morning dew while Karen glared from her kitchen window felt like watching science go to war with stupidity. And here's where things got interesting. The survey revealed that Karen's beautiful, expensive fence wasn't just blocking my easement. It was sitting 3 feet onto the public right-of-way. The county has very specific setback requirements, and Karen's fence violated every single one of them. I filed a complaint with county code enforcement faster than you could say property line violation. Nothing like using the bureaucracy against someone who thinks they're above the rules. But Karen wasn't going down without a fight. The following Tuesday, I got a certified letter from Harrison, Blake & Associates, that's Brad's law firm, in case you missed the family connection. A cease and desist order claiming I was harassing HOA officials and demanding I stop my campaign of defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter was longer than most Stephen King novels and about twice as scary, threatening to sue me for everything from harassment to interfering with business relationships. Legal fees could easily cost me the ranch, and Karen knew it. This wasn't just about a road anymore. It was about whether a working family could stand up to someone with deeper pockets and connections. That night, I sat in my kitchen under the yellow glow of an old lamp, examining those legal documents with hands more comfortable holding wire strippers than court papers. The smell of leather and hay drifted in from the barn, where I usually retreat when life gets complicated. But this time, running away wasn't an option. Emma found me there around midnight, still reading. That girl's got radar for when her dad's worried. We're not giving up, are we? She asked with the kind of quiet determination that reminds me of her mother. Not a chance, I told her. Your great-grandfather built this place with his bare hands. We're not letting some wannabe queen bee take it away. The next morning brought unexpected support. Ralph and Betty Kowalski, married 50 years and tougher than boot leather, stopped by with coffee and sympathy. They'd watched the whole drama unfold from their house across the road. Seen this kind of thing before, Ralph said, sipping coffee from a mug older than most cars. Developers and their pet HOAs trying to squeeze out the locals. Even a feed store owner mentioned that other folks were having HOA troubles. Turns out Karen's little kingdom of control was making enemies faster than a politician during campaign season. Emma's 4-H advisor, Mrs. Peterson, pulled me aside at the next meeting. Document everything, she said. Photos, recordings, witnesses. If this goes to court, you'll need proof. Karen decided to go nuclear the following week. She organized an emergency HOA meeting about what she called security threats from adjacent properties. Full PowerPoint presentation, slides with pictures of my deteriorating ranch buildings, supposedly visible from the subdivision, and somehow bringing down property values. The woman had actually climbed onto her roof to take aerial photos of my barn. Who does that? Her grand proposal. A buffer zone requiring me to plant privacy screening at my own expense, $20,000 worth of trees and shrubs to hide my working ranch from her delicate sensibilities. And if I refused, she'd sue my insurance company directly for diminished property values. I'm not the kind of guy who usually shows up to HOA meetings. I'd rather spend my evening watching paint dry or doing my taxes. But this time she'd crossed a line from annoying neighbor to something that threatened my family's livelihood. I showed up to that meeting with Emma and Ralph as witnesses, armed with my surveyor's report and every piece of historical documentation I could find. The community center smelled like stale coffee and institutional disinfectant, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. 23 people crammed into a room designed for maybe 15. Folding chairs squeaking every time someone shifted their weight. Karen stood at the front with her slideshow, wearing a power suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. She clicked through photos of my ranch like she was presenting evidence at a murder trial. Property values, safety concerns, community standards. When she finished, I stood up and calmly presented my surveyor's report, explained how the ranch had been there first, how the subdivision was built around existing rights, how her fence violated county setback requirements. I even brought copies of the original 1947 homestead deed. During the heated discussion that followed, Karen got flustered and said something she shouldn't have. She mentioned being in contact with Meridian Development about Phase 2 expansion possibilities. The room went dead quiet. Meridian Development was the company that built Sunset Hills Estates, and Phase 2 meant they were looking to build more houses. Guess whose 200-acre ranch would be perfect for that? Suddenly, this wasn't about neighbor disputes or HOA policies. This was about Karen trying to force me to sell by making my ranch unusable. The fence wasn't about security. It was about economic warfare. Ralph's weathered face cracked in the kind of smile you see right before someone drops a bombshell. Funny thing about conspiracies, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. They tend to come apart when people start talking. Other residents started looking uncomfortable. These weren't bad people, just folks who'd bought into Karen's narrative about property protection. Now, they were realizing they'd been manipulated into attacking a neighbor whose family had been there for 70 years. Emma stood up during the discussion. I've never been prouder of that girl. 16 years old, facing down a room full of adults, speaking with more dignity and class than most politicians. She talked about her great-grandfather's legacy, about learning responsibility through 4-H, about how the ranch taught her the value of hard work. This land isn't just property to us, she said, her voice steady despite the hostile crowd. It's where my great-grandfather proved that with enough determination, you can build something lasting. It's where my grandmother raised my dad to believe in doing right by your neighbors. It's where my mom taught me that family means fighting for what matters. You could practically hear Karen's blood pressure rising as her carefully constructed narrative fell apart. But the real game changer came when Brad Morrison visibly cringed as his wife mentioned the developer connections. Lawyers are supposed to disclose conflicts of interest. And if Brad had financial dealings with Meridian Development while representing the HOA, that was a problem. As we walked out of that meeting, I realized I wasn't just fighting an annoying neighbor anymore. I was fighting a conspiracy designed to steal my family's land through harassment and economic pressure. Karen's response to having her conspiracy exposed was to double down on crazy. Within a week, she filed a formal complaint with the county claiming my cattle posed health hazards to the subdivision. According to her report, my prize-winning Angus were apparently disease-ridden menaces threatening the safety of innocent children. But that wasn't even the worst part. She started sending anonymous letters to Emma's school reporting unsafe home conditions and claiming I was an unfit parent. My 16-year-old daughter came home crying because the guidance counselor had pulled her out of class to ask if she felt safe at home. The look on Emma's face when she told me about it. I've never wanted to strangle someone with my bare hands more than I did that moment. Then Karen went after my livelihood. She used her HOA connections to start calling my electrical contracting clients, suggesting they might want to reconsider hiring someone involved in legal troubles. I lost 3 jobs that week, including a $15,000 commercial project I've been counting on to pay for Emma's college applications. The final straw was her social media campaign. She created a Facebook group called Concerned Citizens of Sunset Hills and started posting photos of my cattle with captions about dangerous livestock operations near families. Never mind that these same cattle had been grazing peacefully for decades, or that Emma's 4-H projects had won county championships 3 years running. Time to lawyer up. I hired Sarah Martinez, an attorney who specializes in agricultural law and property rights. Cost me $5,000 I didn't have, but sometimes you've got to spend money to save everything you own. Sarah took one look at my documentation and smiled like a shark who just smelled blood in the water. "This isn't harassment," she said, spreading the evidence across her conference table. "This is systematic intimidation designed to force a property sale. We can work with this." Sarah filed a counter-complaint for intentional interference with business relationships. And that's when things got really interesting. When you're suing someone, you get access to the discovery process. You can force them to hand over documents and answer questions under oath. And boy, did we discover some interesting things. Karen owed $47,000 in back taxes on her property. That explained the desperate need to increase property values quickly. But the real bombshell came when we found out she'd used HOA funds to pay for that fence. $23,000 in community money spent on what was essentially a personal vendetta. That's embezzlement, and it carries serious penalties. Sarah dug deeper and found pattern. Karen had lived in 3 other Texas subdivisions over the past decade, and in each one, she'd been involved in similar conflicts with rural neighbors. Always the same playbook: harassment, legal threats, mysterious developer connections, and eventual forced sales. The tide started turning when the local newspaper picked up the story. A reporter named Jim Santos had been covering HOA abuse cases across the state, and our situation fit his series perfectly. David vs. Goliath Stories sell papers. He told me over coffee at the diner, especially when Goliath turns out to be corrupt. Other victims started coming forward. A retired teacher whose vegetable garden was declared a health hazard. A disabled veteran whose service dog was banned from HOA common areas. An elderly couple forced to remove their late son's memorial garden because it violated landscaping standards. The Ranchers Association offered support and legal fund contributions. Turns out protecting working agricultural land from suburban encroachment is a big deal in Texas. But the biggest surprise came from inside Karen's own house. Brad Morrison showed up at my door one evening looking like a man who'd been carrying a heavy secret too long. He handed me a manila envelope and said, "I can't watch this anymore." Inside were HOA financial records going back 2 years. Every questionable expense, every suspicious payment, every violation of fiduciary duty documented in black and white. Brad might be a mouse, but he'd kept meticulous records of his wife's crimes. "She's been skimming money for months," he said, refusing to come inside for coffee. The fence was just the biggest expense. There are others. Emma's 4-H group organized a Save Our Ranches awareness campaign, complete with T-shirts and bumper stickers. That girl turned into a social media strategist overnight, posting videos about ranch life and agricultural heritage that started going viral. Nothing like having a 16-year-old teach you about public relations. But the emotional toll was getting heavy. I found Emma crying over social media bullying from other kids whose parents had bought into Karen's narrative. She was losing friends, getting dirty looks at school, dealing with stress no teenager should have to handle. Ralph stopped by that evening and found me staring at a letter from a real estate company offering to buy the ranch for fair market value. "You thinking about it?" he asked, settling into my porch chair with a grunt. For about 5 seconds, I admitted. Then I remembered that my wife loved this place, wanted Emma to inherit it someday. "Good," Ralph said, "because I got a feeling your troubles are about to become Karen's problems." Sarah called me on a Thursday morning with news that changed everything. She'd been digging through the original property records, going all the way back to 1947, when she found something that made her literally whoop out loud in the courthouse records room. "Jake," she said, and I could hear the grin in her voice, "sit down for this one." The access road wasn't just an easement. I owned it. Not the right to use it, the actual land underneath it. Apparently, there'd been a surveyor's error when the subdivision was platted. The developers had assumed the road was public right-of-way and built around it. But the original homestead deed clearly showed that my great-grandfather had purchased and owned that strip of land outright. Think about that for a minute. Karen's fence wasn't just blocking my access. It was sitting on my private property. She was trespassing. and she'd spent $50,000 building a fence on land that belonged to me. But wait, it gets better. Sarah had also uncovered what she called the deeper conspiracy. Brad's secret documents revealed that Meridian Development had promised Karen a $200,000 finder's fee for securing my property. The other HOA board members each had their own side deals, consulting fees for various services that seemed suspiciously vague. We're talking about potential criminal charges here. Mail fraud for those fake legal threats sent on Brad's law firm letterhead. Wire fraud for the electronic communications about forcing the sale. And if we could prove coordination between multiple parties, RICO charges, the law they use to prosecute organized crime. Even the county commissioner was getting campaign contributions from Meridian Development. The whole system was rotten from top to bottom. That's when Sarah suggested something that was either brilliant or completely insane. If you own the road, she said, you can control access to it, including charging fees. The irony was beautiful. Karen had built the perfect infrastructure for a toll operation. All we had to do was flip the script. Instead of fighting to remove her fence, we could install our own toll system and charge everyone who used my road to access the subdivision. Is that legal? I asked. Completely, Sarah said. Private road owners can charge reasonable fees for usage. There's precedent all over Texas. That night, I sat on my porch with Emma, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple over our pasture. The smell of evening air carried the sound of cattle settling down for the night, mixed with the distant hum of subdivision air conditioners working overtime. Dad, Emma said, are we really going to charge people to use our road? We're going to charge them exactly what Karen wanted to charge us. I told her, $500 a month plus maintenance fees. Emma laughed, the first real laugh I heard from her in weeks. That's beautifully evil. Ralph wandered over with a beer and settled into his usual chair. When I told him about Sarah's discovery, he just nodded like he'd been expecting it all along. Your great-grandfather was a smart man, he said. Always said he bought that land fair and square, every inch of it. Looks like he was keeping better records than the county. The next morning, I visited my wife's grave to tell her about the plan. Sounds crazy, I know, but I needed to hear myself say it out loud. We fought so hard to keep this place, and now we had a chance to not just save it, but make it profitable. Wish you could see Emma, I told the headstone. She's got your fight in her and my stubborn streak. This Karen woman picked the wrong family to mess with. Building a toll road system sounds complicated, but when you've got the right team, amazing things happen. Ralph turned out to be more than just a retired neighbor. He'd been a county surveyor for 30 years before hanging up his measuring tape. Betty had taught elementary school for 4 decades and knew how to organize people like a general commanding troops. Marcus Chun, my electrical contractor buddy, took one look at the project and grinned like a kid on Christmas morning. Solar-powered toll booth with automatic license plate recognition. Dude, we're basically building the future. Even Brad Morrison was secretly helping, feeding us inside information about Karen's increasingly desperate strategies. Turns out when your wife is committing federal crimes with your law firm's letterhead, you develop a sudden interest in damage control. First step was setting up the legal structure. Sarah helped me file paperwork to establish Lone Star Access Solutions, LLC, a proper business entity that would protect my personal assets from any lawsuits Karen might throw at us. The county permits took 2 weeks and cost $870 in fees, but we got approval for commercial road operation and electronic toll collection. I had a laugh at the irony. Karen's own fence post became the foundation for our toll booth. Nothing like recycling your enemy's mistakes into your own success. Marcus designed a system that would make NASA jealous. Solar panels to power everything, digital cameras for security, automatic license plate recognition that could track who owed what. We calculated fees to exactly match Karen's original demands. $25 per month for unlimited access or $5 per trip for occasional users. Betty researched comparable toll rates from other private roads across Texas. Turns out there are more private toll roads than most people realize, and our rates were actually on the low end. Fair and reasonable, she declared, which in Betty speak means legally bulletproof. The community response was incredible. Local ranchers donated materials faster than we could haul them away: concrete, lumber, steel posts. It was like an old-fashioned barn raising, except we were building justice instead of storing hay. The feed store provided free equipment rental. Everyone wanted to be part of sticking it to the HOA bullies. Emma turned into our social media manager, creating a TikTok account called Ranch Girl Fights Back that started gaining followers by the thousands. She documented every step of the construction process, explaining property rights and agricultural heritage to a generation that gets most of their news from 15-second videos. Kids got a future in communications if ranching doesn't work out. Jim Santos from a newspaper embedded himself like a war correspondent, documenting the entire process for his ongoing series about HOA abuse. Having media coverage meant Karen couldn't try any of her usual sabotage tactics without witnesses. Sarah prepared our lawsuit against Meridian Development for conspiracy and fraud. She also filed criminal referrals with the district attorney's office about the HOA embezzlement and contacted the FBI about potential mail fraud and RICO violations. When you're fighting corruption, you use every weapon in the legal arsenal. The psychological warfare was almost as satisfying as the construction. I posted official notices on the subdivision entrance about the upcoming toll implementation. Legally required 30-day notice to affected property owners. The panic was immediate and hilarious. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss what she termed extortion and illegal road blocking. That's when Brad accidentally revealed Karen's secret developer payments to the entire community. You could practically hear marriages ending in real time. By the end of the month, we had a fully operational toll road system that looked more professional than most government installations. Emma had 50,000 TikTok followers documenting our David versus Goliath story, and Brad Morrison had grown enough spine to start standing up to his wife. Ralph looked at our finished toll booth and nodded approvingly. "Your great-grandfather will be proud," he said. "Taking something meant to hurt you and turning it into something that pays the bills. That's pure Texas thinking." The electronic beep of our first test transaction was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Karen's fence of oppression had become our gateway to financial freedom. Karen's response to our toll road construction was like watching someone have a very public nervous breakdown. She filed false safety complaints with OSHA, claiming our construction crew wasn't following proper protocols. When the inspector showed up, he found our work exceeded every safety standard by a comfortable margin and complimented Marcus on the solar installation design. Next, she tried bribing the county electrical inspector to fail our permits. $500 cash in an envelope, caught on security camera, resulting in a very awkward conversation with internal affairs. Nothing says, "I'm losing badly," quite like attempting to corrupt public officials. Then came the hired protesters. I'm not kidding. Karen actually paid 20 people to show up with signs reading, "Stop the toll road tyranny and protect our property values." The fact that half of them had Louisiana license plates and couldn't pronounce Sunset Hills correctly kind of gave away the game. But the real entertainment came when Karen started her social media war, creating fake accounts to spread lies about my financial troubles and Emma's supposed academic failures. The woman spent more time managing fake Facebook profiles than most teenagers spend on actual social media. Our security cameras caught Karen sneaking onto the construction site at 2 a.m., wearing dark clothes like some kind of suburban ninja. She was trying to pour sugar into our concrete mixer engine. Apparently, she'd watched too many movies about sabotage. The problem with Karen's plan was that she tripped over a wheelbarrow in the dark and fell face first into a patch of fresh concrete. The security footage of her struggling to get up, covered in gray slop and cursing like a sailor, went viral on Emma's TikTok account within hours. 3 million views and counting. She had to call 911 to get unstuck from the concrete, which meant explaining to paramedics why she was trespassing on private property at 2 a.m., wearing a ski mask in July. The local fire chief couldn't stop laughing long enough to operate the hose. Karen's lawyer husband tried filing an emergency injunction to stop our toll road construction, claiming it violated public access rights. Big mistake. When you drag a judge into your family drama, You better have ironclad evidence. Our case was so solid that the judge not only denied the injunction, but ordered Karen to pay our legal fees. The Bar Association also opened an ethics investigation into Brad for filing frivolous lawsuits and allowing his personal conflicts to interfere with professional judgment. Nothing ends a legal career faster than using the court system for personal vendettas. The community response was shifting in our favor faster than a Texas thunderstorm. 3 HOA board members resigned rather than be associated with Karen's increasingly unhinged behavior. Local businesses started advertising toll road construction worker discounts, turning our project into a symbol of standing up to bullies. Regional TV news picked up the story, and suddenly we had reporters camping out at the ranch asking about David versus Goliath battles in suburban Texas. Emma handled the interviews like a seasoned politician, explaining property rights and agricultural heritage with the kind of clarity that made me wonder if she should run for office someday. Instead of pressing criminal charges for the sabotage, I decided to offer Karen a choice: community service working with Emma's 4-H club, or face prosecution for criminal mischief and trespassing. The psychological pressure of having to help the very people she'd been trying to destroy was pure genius, if I do say so myself. But Karen's problems were multiplying faster than rabbits in spring. Her tax troubles became public record when a newspaper investigated her financial situation. A foreclosure warning notice appeared on her front door, photographed by helpful neighbors and shared across social media platforms. The smell of desperation was almost tangible when Karen approached Meridian Development, demanding immediate payment for her consulting services. The developers, facing their own FBI investigation, cut ties faster than you could say criminal conspiracy. Our electronic toll system experienced some mysterious technical difficulties during the first week of operation. Investigation revealed that Karen had hired what she called a computer expert to hack our system. The expert turned out to be a 14-year-old neighbor kid. She'd paid $50 to break the cameras. When the kid's parents found out, they marched him over to apologize and offer to work off the damages. Smart kid, actually. I hired him as our part-time tech consultant. Nothing like turning your enemy's sabotage into a recruiting opportunity. The taste of victory was getting sweeter every day. Our toll road generated $2,800 in the first week from residents who chose monthly passes over the inconvenience of detours. Emma managed the payment app and customer service with the efficiency of someone who'd been running businesses her whole life. First month, revenue hit $12,000 with most subdivision residents choosing monthly passes over the inconvenience of detours. Emma's customer service skills turned angry callers into satisfied customers who actually appreciated having a maintained, well-lit access road. The media circus had grown from regional interest to national attention. Small-town Texas toll road justice became a trending topic on social media. Emma's TikTok following hit 500,000, and she started getting sponsorship offers from agricultural equipment companies. My 16-year-old daughter was becoming the face of property rights activism. Karen's public meltdown at the grocery store, where she screamed at me in front of a dozen witnesses about extortion and illegal road blocking, got recorded by multiple shoppers and went viral faster than a summer cold. The woman was literally shaking with rage, her voice reaching pitches that probably bothered dogs 3 counties over. Her employer, a major pharmaceutical company, put her on administrative leave after the grocery store video surfaced on LinkedIn with her name attached. Apparently, having your sales executives associated with viral meltdowns and federal investigations isn't great for corporate image. Brad Morrison finally filed for separation, citing irreconcilable differences and ongoing criminal behavior. He moved out of the house, leaving Karen with a full mortgage payment she couldn't afford. Brad's cooperation with federal investigators was comprehensive. He'd been documenting Karen's crimes for months, probably planning his exit strategy. Emma and I were working as a real team now, managing what had become a legitimate business operation. We hired 2 part-time employees for maintenance and customer service, creating jobs in our small community. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen's attempt to destroy us had turned into the most successful venture I'd ever launched. The FBI visited Karen 3 times that month, each visit lasting longer than the previous one. Word was they were building cases for mail fraud, wire fraud, and RICO violations. The sound of their black SUVs pulling into her driveway became as regular as the mail delivery. Karen's financial situation spiraled into freefall. Foreclosure proceedings began when she missed her third consecutive mortgage payment. The bank wasn't interested in her excuses about temporary cash flow problems and pending legal settlements. Numbers don't lie, and Karen's numbers were uglier than a roadkill armadillo. Her adult children publicly distanced themselves from her behavior. Her son posted on Facebook that the family was embarrassed and disappointed by his mother's actions. Her daughter blocked Karen on all social media platforms and moved back to Dallas. Nothing says rock bottom quite like your own kids cutting off contact. The subdivision residents organized their first block party in the development's history, specifically to celebrate the new HOA board and thank our family for standing up to corruption. Former enemies became friends, united by the shared experience of being manipulated by someone they trusted with their community funds. 6 months later, I'm sitting in a Harvard Business School classroom explaining how a small-town property dispute became a case study in creative problem-solving and entrepreneurial justice. The professor introduced our story as an example of turning adversity into opportunity. And honestly, I'm still getting used to being called an innovative rural entrepreneur. Karen got 18 months in federal prison for mail fraud and embezzlement, plus 3 years probation and full restitution to the HOA. Her house was foreclosed. She declared bankruptcy, and her pharmaceutical license was permanently revoked. Last I heard, she was working at a call center in Oklahoma, and her own children still won't speak to her. But this story isn't really about Karen's downfall. It's about what we built from the wreckage of her hatred. Our toll road business expanded to 3 additional rural locations across Texas, helping other ranch families monetize access disputes. Lone Star Access Solutions, LLC, now employs 8 people full-time and has been featured in Small Business Magazine as an example of finding opportunity in conflict. Emma graduated as valedictorian and is thriving at Texas A&M in their agricultural law program. She still manages our social media presence, which now includes 750,000 TikTok followers who love our justice served with a side of business sense content. We're planning to open a law practice together after she graduates, Sullivan & Sullivan, attorneys at law specializing in property rights. The bigger impact has been incredible. Jake's Law passed the Texas legislature unanimously, protecting rural property access rights from HOA overreach. 12 other states have introduced similar legislation, and there's a Supreme Court case citing our precedent in property law disputes. Sunset Hills Estates became a model community with transparent governance and monthly barbecues instead of confrontational meetings. Property values actually increased due to the positive national attention, and they built a small monument honoring agricultural heritage families right next to our toll booth. But the thing I'm most proud of is the Rural Heritage Scholarship Fund we established using toll road profits. We award $10,000 scholarships annually to farm and ranch kids pursuing higher education. Emma administers the program, and this year we helped 15 students afford college. We also partnered with the county to purchase and preserve 500 acres as permanent ranch land, ensuring future generations will understand where their food comes from and why agricultural heritage matters. The conservation project attracted matching funds from the state, turning our small investment into lasting environmental protection. The first annual Property Rights and Barbecue Festival drew 5,000 visitors last month, featuring workshops on property law, small business development, and HOA governance reform. Former enemies worked side by side, serving brisket and directing traffic, proving that communities can heal when truth wins over manipulation. Our toll road system became the template for rural infrastructure funding across Texas. The Department of Transportation is piloting similar projects in 6 counties, proving that private enterprise can solve public access problems while generating local economic development. The personal healing has been just as important as the business success. I started dating Linda Peterson, Emma's former 4-H advisor, who's now the elementary school principal. She supported us through the darkest days and stuck around for the victory celebration. Emma calls her the mom she chose, which makes my heart full every time I hear it. Ralph and Betty officially became Emma's honorary grandparents, and they're teaching her everything about surveying and community organizing. When Ralph retires next year, Emma will take over managing the scholarship fund with Betty's organizational expertise and Ralph's eye for detail. The documentary Toll Road to Justice won a regional Emmy Award, and my memoir Fenced In, Fighting Back spent 6 weeks on the bestseller list. But the real satisfaction comes from the hundreds of emails we get from families facing similar battles, using our story as inspiration to fight back against bullies with deep pockets. I still visit my wife's grave every Sunday to update her on Emma's achievements and our unexpected business success. She's going to be a better lawyer than both of us combined, I tell the headstone. And she learned it all by watching her dad refuse to give up. Sometimes the best response to a bully is profitable persistence. Know your property rights. Ignorance costs money, but knowledge pays dividends. And remember, turn your problems into other people's solutions, then charge them fairly for the privilege.